Good evening and welcome to the Coeur d'Alene City Council meeting of March 1st. I was thinking it was the 2nd already. I'm moving ahead too quickly. We'll call the meeting to order. Clerk will note that all council are present. And we'll begin our meeting with an invocation from Pastor Jonathan Owens with Heart of the City Church. Pastor Owens, we welcome you to our meeting.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to have this opportunity to pray. We know the importance, we can look at the world and see the importance of leadership, so just wanted to pray for you and City Council in this gathering today. Father, we just thank you for this time, and I'm remembering the words of Jesus that he didn't leave us alone, but he sent the Holy Spirit to lead us, the Spirit of truth, and we just invite you into this gathering today. I just pray for our mayor and city council. The decisions they make impacts the entire city, and just pray, God, that you would give them great wisdom, Father, that you would surround them, their families, their spouses, that you would bless them. I lift up our beautiful city to you, every home, every family, every business, every school, that your hand of protection would rest upon it, your blessing would rest upon it. And we just thank you for this time, and we just dedicate this night to you and everything that's going to be discussed here today, that you would be glorified and your grace would rest upon it. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move on any further, does the council have any amendments to the agenda? Thank you. We have a couple presentations tonight. The first one is U.S. Secret Service Award presentation by our Police Chief Lee White. Chief, the floor is yours. Well, that doesn't look like Chief.
He was younger there.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Greg Ligori. I'm the resident agent in charge of the Secret Service office in Spokane. My office's area of responsibility covers eastern Washington, North Idaho, and western Montana. I'm here tonight to recognize the exceptional casework recently conducted by Detective Tom Soudal of the Coeur d'Alene Police Department, Detective Neil Urig with the Post Falls Police Department, and Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Becky Perez with the Kootenai County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. For some context, I think the Secret Service's mission in protecting the President and Vice President is probably well known by most people. But in addition to our protective mission, and probably lesser known is the fact that the Secret Service maintains a robust financial crimes, cyber crimes, and computer forensics program. And in that effort and in that context, the Secret Service staffs and runs the National Computer Forensics Institute, or NCFI program, which is located in Hoover, Alabama. The mission of the NCFI program is to train and to equip local and state officers, prosecutors, and judges in cybercrime investigations and cyber incident response. Since its inception in 2008, the NCFI has trained well over 16,000 local and state officers and prosecutors and judges, and provided over $80 million in computer hardware and software equipment to these respective officials. Usually what happens yearly is the NCFI, the Secret Service, will recognize its top graduates who've gone through the program and go back to their respective departments and are conducting forensic examinations for their communities. I'm happy to point out that Detective Urig with Post Falls, in 2020, he was actually recognized as one of the NCFI's top forensic examiners in 2020. This year, what the NCFI is doing, what the Secrets is doing, is also now starting to recognize cases. So what they're doing is they're reviewing casework that their graduates are conducting back with their respective departments and recognizing those top cases on their merits. Of about 100 cases that the NCFI staff reviewed, Detective Sudol's, Detective Urig's, and DPA Perez's case that they recently investigated and prosecuted was selected as one of the top 20 cases in the country for its impact on the community here in Coeur d'Alene. And just a little context of what the case entailed. It was initiated in the summer of 2020 when the Coeur d'Alene Police Department identified and arrested an individual who was caught covertly filming a child in one of the restrooms here down by the lake. Through subsequent investigations conducted by the Coeur d'Alene Police Department with the assistance of Detective Urig, and Detective Sudol in doing their forensic examinations, what they've been trained to do at the NCFI, in reviewing the cell phones and computers that were seized via search warrants from the suspect that was identified. Well over 13,000 images were identified depicting minors in sexually explicit conditions. Through DPA Perez's efforts in prosecuting the case, the individual was subsequently prosecuted and sentenced to 65 years in jail for crimes that were committed. So I think this case and their efforts illustrate what the Secret Service and the NCI program, what the program is about, hopefully training and providing officers and local officials the resources and tools to further keep our communities safe. And I think this case exemplifies that. Because I think there's nothing more that we do as a law enforcement community is keeping the most vulnerable in our community safe. And so I'm pleased on behalf of the Secret Service, the NCFI program, present this award to the three of them for their efforts in keeping our community safe. Thank you for your time this evening.
Yay!
Thank you for the presentation, and to the three recipients, thank you very much for your good work. It is important work, and we very much celebrate your success. Thank you. The second presentation is actually a proclamation, and thank you, staff, for giving me larger print. Whereas in times of crisis, people in Coeur d'Alene come together to care for one another. This humanitarian spirit is part of the foundation of our community and is exemplified by American Red Cross volunteers and donors. Whereas in 1881, Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross, turning her steadfast dedication to helping others into a bold mission of preventing and alleviating people's suffering. Whereas in Coeur d'Alene, the contributions of the local Red Cross volunteers give hope to the most vulnerable in their darkest hours, whether it's providing emergency shelter, food and comfort for families, those devastated by local wildfires, educating the community about disaster preparedness, and whereas their work to prevent and alleviate human suffering is vital to strengthening our community's resilience. Now therefore, I, James Hammond, Mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do thereby proclaim the month of March 2022 as Red Cross Month. I encourage all citizens of the City of Coeur d'Alene to reach out and support its humanitarian mission. And witness hereof, I have affixed my signature and caused the Great Seal of the City of Coeur d'Alene to be affixed to this document. And I would like to present this document to Laura Werner. Let's stand in front of the mic. Laura, thank you for representing the Red Cross. On behalf of the City of Coeur d'Alene, we want to present this proclamation to you, recognizing your good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure how many of you know what we really do here locally, but I'm a therapist, and so I work disasters as a mental health volunteer. I'm also a duty officer, so a couple of times a week, I've got a 24-hour shift where I'm just waiting for a house fire. So, but our territory actually is North Idaho and all of eastern Washington, all the way down to Walla Walla. You know, I took care of a fire at Walla Walla just day before yesterday, Yakima, you know, all the way over to Wenatchee and all. And the Red Cross does so many, many different things. And I deploy a lot too. I just came home from Kentucky not too long ago, but we do so many different things. And my partner, Jeanette, she has such a very different background from me because we also do swimming lessons, set up CPR for the community. And actually, Coeur d'Alene is going to have a Sound the Alarm in May, and Sound the Alarm is a very, very big event where we've taken the data to look and see where we believe people have most of the fires are. So where people may not have something in their house that we can for free install. We usually do this along with the fire department, but maybe Jeanette would like to tell you a bit of the other things that the Red Cross does.
So, and I'm local.
Introduce yourself,
Yes,
please.
I'm Jeanette Lester, and between the two of us, we have 60 years of experience with the American Red Cross together serving. My training is more in instructor training for water safety and CPR, emergency response, those kinds of things, and also disaster, fire relief, the calls in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yep.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
Thank you.
much. Yes.
It's great to celebrate the great work that is going on in our community. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
I'm not signed up, but may I just walk up?
Okay.
Is it okay if I hand out a few flyers to the city council and mayor?
Sure.
City council members, Mayor Hammond, thank you for having me. What you're being handed out is a very racy, very sexually explicit content.
Can you introduce yourself, please, and give us your address?
Sure. My name is William Lee. I live at 123 Main Street, Coeur d'Alene. The artist of that artwork is Abby Light. In the coming weeks, she will be on the agenda to be approved to the Arts Commission. And I just wanted to bring to your attention some of her work. I'm not going to comment too much on it. I've posted the sources where I got the work. It's just from her personal website and her Instagram account. But that's there for you to evaluate. I don't know if you've seen it yet. And for anyone else here, I have a few copies. Just come up and ask me and I can give you a copy. It's basically got some samples of her work. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Finish writing this down.
Do we have anybody else signed up?
I apologize, I didn't sign up either, but if it's okay with you guys. My name's Neil Schreibeis. I'm with Lamar Advertising, and I live in Post Falls. I hope you don't count that against me. But apparently you guys are going to be looking at the sign code, and I wanted to give a few comments about that. The way the current code and the proposed code is, it's slowly going to remove all billboards from the city. This is not only going to hurt the billboard companies, but also other businesses in the area. Businesses use billboards to direct traffic and and to their locations what may or may not be in a viable area. Businesses use billboards to inform visitors and tourists of where these businesses are. Landowners use the billboards as an additional income to their property. It's a domino effect when billboard companies can invest in an area which brings income to the area. We're just like any other business. We spend money here, whether it's rent to the landowners, construction costs, maintenance costs, vehicles, all that kind of stuff, which relates to other businesses, and then they in turn can advertise on the billboards, which generates incomes for them, which they in turn reinvest everything and pass on to other businesses, which pass on to other businesses. They all kind of work together to help generate more income from the whole community, which actually generates income for the city through taxes and other things. Our goal is to help expand and make the area, make an area like Coeur Lane more vibrant and attractive, which also brings in visitors, which generates income for the community. We cannot do this if we are forced to remove a structure out of damage or repair or because it is annexed into the city. Electronic message displays, or we call them digital signs, can help an advertiser display more products or specials. As a company, we do Amber Alerts, or we could help the police department divert traffic to a certain area at a given time, or even promote a city event at a park. All this is done very quickly through the electronic signs. We would like other businesses, we like to help other businesses, but with a limited inventory, we cannot. And the less inventory, the less we can help. The more businesses we help, the more it helps the community. We cannot do that if the sign code, if we can't alter a sign or relocate it. My time up?
Your time is up.
Okay. If we can't relocate it, but we would like to help everybody work together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Randy Neal, address 3290 North 11th Street, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So, in reading the paper, I know that the council and mayor cannot answer any questions, but as a citizen that's lived here for a very long time, I'm concerned about the Aryan Nations presence that's going to be taking place in Hayden on the 12th. And I remember back in the day how we used to handle when Butler did his parades downtown Coeur d'Alene, is we would, there was many businesses that would offer like free movies and things of that nature to draw away from that gathering. I would like to see something like that organized up here in the not too distant future. That kind of group is not welcome in North Idaho, and well, frankly, shouldn't be really welcome anywhere. But it's one of those things where it's just I don't want to see a resurgence of hate in our community. I'd like to see it, our community. It's like going down to Pocatello to take care of my grandfather. for a time. When I said that I was from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, the first words out of someone's mouth, because knowing that I'm from here, their first question is, "Are you a racist?" And like, being from Coeur d'Alene automatically makes you a racist. It's absurd, and it's something that we, as a community, need to continue to work to shake off that reputation throughout our own state and throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could we respond at all?
Pardon?
Can we respond at all?
No, we
No,
don't
okay.
respond to public comment. That's a great response. Anyone else wishing to use that forum? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to move to approve consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 22013, please.
We've got some announcements first.
Oh, do we? I'm sorry. Have too much.
I know you want to get out of here tonight, Woody,
Open.
and we're
I missed my
we're
nap.
gonna make it quick, but
I apologize.
announcements
Sorry.
from council?
Yes, thank you,
Councilman Wood.
Mr. Mayor. Well, it's timely to have Mr. Neal speak. I would like to make an announcement, and I am president of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, which is a completely separate role from City Council. The task force has been in this community for a little over 40 years, and they were really developed and born as a result of dealing with the Aryan nations. The task force over the years has taken very, very measured responses on any kind of activity that we think would harm the community. But I will tell you, the city of Coeur d'Alene has been really a strong supporter with the task force every step of the way. The city has been very clear in their position on how they feel about discrimination or any sort of activity by hate groups. So from a task force perspective, we think the city of Coeur d'Alene has been stellar in their response, and we can always rely on them for a strong statements. The task force has not right now organized any sort of counter activity. We honestly don't know if a group will even come to Hayden. If a group does come to Hayden, we would certainly support that community. You can expect us to stand up and do so. But we have not responded because we don't know that it's actually going to occur. We certainly are monitoring, but we will be very active and make sure that you're aware of any sort of gathering where we would try to send a more positive message. We don't do counter-protest. We follow the teachings of Dr. King. We don't go to a Klan rally. But what we do is our own meetings, and we do our own messaging. So you will hear from us if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your work, your continued work on that effort. It certainly is very important as well. Yes, Kiki.
Just a brief reminder, the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership, which has a website up, it's rhgip.com, and a bunch of information about the work that group has been doing is being posted and updated almost weekly there. And within the next 2 months, there's now over a dozen organizations that have a scheduled PowerPoint presentation coming to them to let them know what work is being done, how they can get involved, and what some of the future plans are. The Coeur d'Alene City Council's on that list, so there will be a person coordinating with them to have a presentation to come to council in a very short period of time, and there'll be a question and answer period with that.
Thank you. Other comments? I do have one. I wanted to talk about a letter that was in the letter to the editor in the paper last week, and it reported one of our councilmen saying that the Planning and Zoning Commission was out of control. That was not at all what the councilman was saying. And I'm bringing that forth at this point because I want to emphasize that we all support our commission, and we want to work with that commission, and none of us would express the the thought that they are out of control. The other thing that I guess I would just say, and this is a part of a larger issue, is I would hope that we as a community and we as councils and commissions, if we have a concern, we visit with each other rather than do it in the paper. I think that's a much more effective strategy than throwing it out in the public arena. We need to work together more now than we ever have. And that certainly will be one of my efforts as mayor, is to be sure that we are more focused on working together as a community. Okay, Woody, I believe you had a motion you started.
Oh, I already did my part. I would like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 22013.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, there's an item in here that I wish was given more attention. The Arts Commission has approved a donation of The Miner, which is another full-size statue that will go here in McEwen Park by artist Terry Lee. It's part of the series of statues of artwork that is about people who work in Idaho, and it's part of our history. And this is the kind of art I love. So thank you to the Arts Commission for doing such a good job. And I wish we had like pictures to show, but it looks really neat. So I look forward to that coming in.
Well, the press did a wonderful article on that today and
They
showed
did.
pictures of it. So I was really pleased to see that.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yeah.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we have Council Bill number 22-111002, approving repeal of a certain chapter of the municipal code and adopting other codes relative to our signage. And I would like to introduce Renata McLeod, our Municipal Services Director, to introduce this topic. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. We're finally bringing this forward. It's been a bit of time that staff has been studying this, researching this, and gathering the data to bring this forward to you. We did present this at the February 7th General Services Public Works Committee meeting, and since that time, we've tweaked it just a tiny bit, added in a little more clarity of definition for vision triangle, the responsible party for a campaign temporary sign, and that a temporary sign can be removed without the 30-day notice. So the version you have in your packet is the updated version, and we wanted to note those quick little changes. The group that was working on this was a great group. It was a group of very intellectual folks that helped bring this forward today. We had Hillary Anderson, Chris Bosley, Sean Youngman, Randy Adams, and of course Kelly Setters, all at the table going through some of the other Idaho city codes from Missoula, Montana, Spokane, Washington. During that time, the Region 1 and 2 Association of Planners held their annual meeting, and we were able to run it by them as well, so we got their input. We looked at the model code from the International Municipal Lawyers Association, so I hope you have some confidence that we put a lot of effort behind this and what we are bringing you today. In the staff report, there's a great chart that kind of talked about the current code versus the proposed code. Randy Adams is a great author there that helped put that together. So I'm not going to go over every little change that occurred, but I'm going to give you a highlight of some of the items in the code and examples of the type of signs we're talking about here today. So one of the reasons why we're here today is the constitutionality of sign code. There was some case law that came forward. We had some content in our sign code we needed to look at. So I'm going to have Randy Adams come up and give you a little education on what that means.
Good evening. This all started in 2015 when the U.S. Supreme Court came out with a new opinion that tried to clarify what is and is not permitted in terms of sign codes. and basically stated that if you have to read a sign to know what regulation applies to it, then that is content-based. Content-based sign regulations are presumptively impermissible, but they can be allowed if there is a compelling state interest and the regulation is narrowly drawn. So we have taken that Supreme Court opinion and gone through the existing sign code with a fine-tooth comb to try to call out all of the content-based regulations, at least those content-based regulations which we don't feel have a compelling interest. And so that's what you have before you tonight is a code that we've, as Renata mentioned, we've looked at Boise sign code, Spokane sign code, many cities sign code, model codes, and a lot of articles that have discussed this Supreme Court case and what it means. And we have come forward with what we think is a reasonable attempt to keep what the council had originally adopted as a sign code while cleaning it up to make sure that it would withstand legal challenge. Thank you.
And our teammates are here tonight, so throughout the presentation, if you have specific questions from them, we can call them back forward. In addition, we've simplified the code, so we've added some clarity. As you can see from as we go through this, many pages have been narrowed down to 19 pages. So we're starting to see a little more use of the economical style of signs, such as banners and flags. So we needed to add that element into our code. Our sign board has not met in over 10 years, and we certainly have not received any major complaints or needs to call the sign board in over 5 years. So we are at that point in life where we think it's time to repeal that out of our code, and we can deal with appeals like we do in all of our other code sections. So some of the highlights, as I said before, we've modified the definitions. So we've taken down the terms from 68 down to 16 and simplified the type of signs. So now they're qualifying either as a permanent or a temporary sign, and under those definitions, there's several categories. We've clarified on the application that there's a responsible party that needs to be listed and the enforcement process. So as we said, we've been working on this for a while. We put it out there for some stakeholder input in November of 2020. We put a link in our municipal milestone newsletter that December, and then again posted it to the webpage for input this January. So some of the input we received was from staff. Some of it, again, as I said, the different organizations we worked with. We emailed it to all the sign contractors that have pulled a permit with the city in the last 3 years, twice, and posted it to our webpage for consumption. So we received a comment from the Downtown Association about A-frame signs and the need to maybe allow those to be a little lengthier period of time. We started out with a 60-day clause, and we've upped it to a 90-day clause so that all temporary signs are the same timeline. Because we're not doing content-based sign code, it's either a temporary sign or a permanent sign. So all temporary signs need to be held the same. So if you extend A-frame signs to 6 months, all temporary signs would be 6 months. So we felt the 90 days was an appropriate compromise. And again, that's something the council can certainly weigh in on. We had a couple comments from local agencies regarding billboards, and I'd like to just note that that's part of the sign code we did not amend, so that is the original sign code and the original intent from council from way back in the day, that they were not wanting any additional sign billboards allowed in the city. So one of the other things that you can take under consideration when you're dealing with a sign code is some of the looks of your community. What are the aesthetics? Now, obviously, this is not from the city of Coeur d'Alene, but this is an extreme example of sign clutter.
But can you tell us where that is? I like the price of gas there.
Yeah, I can't tell you where or from how long, but I see a Washington, D.C. sign over there somewhere. So I'm going to have Hillary Anderson come up and talk to you a little bit about the planning perspective and the elements that they would like to share with you on signs.
Great. Well, good evening. Yes, in addition to kind of the Reed case and content-based, aesthetics really is important for communities for looking at our sign codes. And so one of the things that when the planners came together and met with our city team, we discussed all those things. So we talked about the Reed case, we talked about aesthetics, we talked about what's important for why we're regulating signs. And it is important to be looking at the placement, the size, where they're located, the types of signage, all those things are very important to us. I wanted to talk about, just very briefly, so the sign code, when it was initially adopted back in 2007 and kind of the intent with that, it really kind of speaks to the heart of the sign code, I think still today, that it's really to, in addition to the health, safety, property, and welfare of the public, it's to improve the neat, clean, and orderly appearance of the city, and to improve the effectiveness of signs in identifying and advertising businesses. But then it speaks to preserving and protecting the scenic beauty of Coeur d'Alene and to promote the healthy business climate of Coeur d'Alene. So I think that's really important. And then in 2010, the City Council adopted our design guidelines. We have commercial design guidelines, and then we have guidelines for our infill areas in the downtown as well. And very similarly, it was trying to make sure that we have an appropriate development that ensures vibrant and functional commercial areas. So that was one of the ones from the commercial design standards. And to encourage development that adds positively to the character and quality of the community. And so I think all these things work together, the sign code with our commercial design guidelines and our other design guidelines in the community. I think we haven't changed a lot in the sign code related to this other than kind of cleaning it up, streamlining it. But I think what's in the current sign code, as well as these additions that have been made to ensure it's compliant with the Reed case, I think it's a very sound sign code from the planning perspective. Thank you.
So we can move into a little bit more about what kind of signs we will have regulated in the code. So as we said earlier, there's permanent and there's temporary. So under the permanent, you're going to see those things such as the projecting signs, roof signs, electronic center or shopping center signs, and some of those commercial subdivision signs. Under temporary, again, we've allowed for 90 days with maybe one extension if there's some sort of circumstances, construction continues, things like that. And that's going to include all your A-frame, banners, construction, real estate, promotional, and campaign signs. So here's some examples of what we mean by some of these signs. So you have your freestanding signs. They're independent from the building. Some of them are going to need some building permit, engineered footings, and we do inspections for that. But as you can see, lots of businesses on the same lot are easily advertised in these types of signs. Permanently attached. It can be attached in many ways. It can be painted on, it can be added on, or a simplistic little sign to the building. You're going to see some examples in here that maybe are no longer existing, but they're there just to give you kind of a flavor of what we're talking about when we refer to these types of signs. So roof signs, as you can see, some people still do choose to put signs on the roof instead of the building. Like here's a good one that they have so much of a roof line, it's really hard to see the side of the building. So it's probably a good idea for them. And this one here, you'll see it's a little tiny coffee stand. How did it get such a huge sign? Well, our sign quantity is based on your frontage of your lot. And it is on a very large lot on Government Way, so it has a much larger sign allowance. Electronic messaging, we're seeing these a little more often. So we've written in some examples there of how to measure the lumens, they're called nits, and how fast they can flash. Here's an example of maybe one that was set maybe to flash a little too fast. And as you can see from that, it's a super busy street. That's 3rd Street going down the street there. It's very distracting to the drivers. You can't even really read what the sign is trying to tell you. So that would not be allowable under the current code standards. And then just a little example of how it looks when you're in your car, and it looks like you're being pulled over. So it is one of those things that can be distracting in many ways. So hopefully the new code helps us get that straightened out. Temporary signs, you're going to have event and promotional signs allowed under this. Now, this one here was a very unique one, so I thought I'd have to snap a picture of that one for you. But oftentimes we see A-frame signs. So we've cleaned up the code to kind of be a little more specific about when A-frame signs are allowed. As you can see from this example in the middle, you have 1, 2, 3 signs on that sidewalk. It's probably blocking the width of the ADA required access points. And again, here's one on the corner at 95 that's absolutely within the pedestrian crossing and wouldn't be allowed if it came in for a permit and requested that location. So we've got quite a few out there that aren't permitted, that they've just placed them out there. They're super easy to get. You can run up to Staples and grab an A-frame sign for an event. So we're working on cleaning that up, and with the allowance that there's only certain circumstances they'll be allowed under, and for 90 days, that should help a lot. Banner signs, again, you see these every once in a while. They're usually temporary, trying to advertise a special event or a going out of business sale, buy one, get one free sale. So those ones will still be allowed. They'll just be under that 90-day requirement. And then Kelly's going to do a little explanation of you of how the size of the sign allowance works, so you can get an idea based on a real-life example.
Evening. So I process all the signs within the city. So how I do that is, here's an example of a frontage on Government Way, which is 225 feet, and it's zone C17. So we measure it by the zone and the frontage of the street. So in this example, we times that by 3, and it comes up to 675 total signage allowance. And that's this property here. So here's my calculation sheet that's within the code. So I take the zoning, the frontage, I times that by 1.75 because there's 4 lanes there on Government Way. Then I times that by 0.25, and that's what I get, the total of 98 square feet. And then I add 32 to that, and that's their total allowance for freestanding signs. And then that gets deducted from their total allowance, and the remainder is used for wall signs. So they get a pretty good amount of signage. So, yeah. Do you have any questions regarding that? Yes.
Sure. Kelly, is that formula something that is used kind of predominantly through a lot of different municipalities and through organizations you work with?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's been in place since 2007. That's what my research through the city of Coeur d'Alene. It's been used that long.
But is it used throughout the state, or?
Yes.
Through,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, same formula.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Yep, go. Oops, sorry.
So we refer to that kind of as an industry standard, and we often steal from other cities and organizations and try and mimic what works. So then, of course, maintenance, accidents, businesses closing happens. So we do have some section of the code that talks about maintenance, getting them repaired in a certain timely fashion. If they close a business, signage is supposed to be removed within 30 days. That does become difficult because sometimes it's a leasee and the owner's out of state, and we have some tracking down to do, and eventually the business turns over and new signage comes up, so it hasn't been too terribly problematic. But like this one here, it was down for quite a while. They had a hard time finding parts, and now maybe they'll have a hard time finding labor to do certain signs. So we always allow a lot of leeway when accidents happen.
Oh, question?
Yes, go ahead.
So, and on that kind of a sign versus, and earlier and I think we're going to get to, like, billboards are, like if a billboard happened to get blown over, is it treated different than one of these?
Yes, in the code, and it's kind of like non-conforming use, so it's a non-conforming sign, an allowed non-conforming sign. So if there is damage done, and I think it's over 50%, is that right? Then it is not allowed to be rebuilt.
And when you say non-conforming, I guess that's something that, like you say, past councils have taken given a certain direction, but I guess conforming or non-conforming is in the eyes of the council. I mean, is that something that can be, because I guess, to me, when I hear non-conforming, it's something like, oh, wow, that's like something that's really way out of building code or this or that, and there's a logical reason of why you phase them
I
out.
think one example would be like in the building code.
Right.
If there's a building that's in a certain zone, when it's annexed in, it may be legally non-conforming. But if it burns down or is damaged beyond a certain point, it can't be rebuilt where it is non-conforming in that zoning district. And I don't know if that's something you can better explain, or is that the way it works? Yeah, and so
I guess
it's
I'm
kind of a
thinking-
standard in when you have a law
Yeah.
that is either changed or when something's brought in and it doesn't meet the current laws, it's called legally non-conforming.
Yeah, well, and I
And so
think,
most of the standards are, if it's damaged beyond 50%, it doesn't get to be rebuilt.
and again, thinking of kind of, not in the life safety, I mean, this isn't a life safety issue, it's more of an aesthetics, I guess, so, okay, well, I guess we'll ponder that, okay.
Renata,
Yes.
I have a question. I was around in '07 when we first did the billboard thing, and as I recall, the theory was no more, draw a line in the sand for the future. So the non-conforming thing, if it gets knocked down or blown up or burned or something, it seems odd to me that we would say, oh, no, you can't, because I thought the rule was about having no more. We drew the
Well,
line
it's also
saying-
with what the code doesn't allow for them now. So you're trying to get into compliance with today's code. So the idea or philosophy back then was, we'll take what's there, but we want to phase them out eventually. I guess. I wasn't here during that time, but you can interpret it any way you want.
Well, I think, Woody, that what we need to recognize, that section of the code hasn't changed. That isn't part of the changes that they're bringing forth right now. So if you have some concerns about that, then you would want to make a motion to take action on that separately from what we're talking about tonight.
I think I'll have to find some of the older people and see if I'm on the right page here.
Why are you looking at me?
Oh, well, I was wishing you were older, Dan.
Better than me. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, non-conforming. I'm a non-conformist. Thank you. So if you could go back to the slide that shows the shopping center, freestanding permanent signs. Yes.
Yes.
So, like, we have billboards we're talking about billboards. We have billboards. You can't build any more billboards. But what would be to stop someone to build something like this where they would normally build a billboard? I mean, does this have to be attached to a shopping center? Or could I buy a little driveway, a piece of property, and stick this up on there and then lease it out?
So as Kelly explained to you, your sign allowance is going to be based on your frontage. And so for like our mall here, it fronts US 95. So there's a little bit more allowance when you're along a freeway. And we do have specific regulations that are allowed for shopping malls when you're sharing several businesses in one site.
Okay, and our sign code doesn't cover like a rental truck that would have a big billboard on it and drive around the city?
No, we did not
And our
do
sign code
portables.
doesn't cover projected signs? So if there's a big blank wall somewhere and I decide to project,
Well,
Eat at Joe's,
Randy, do you want to talk about off-premise signage? Because that's where I would go with this one. If you had a light over here and you're projecting on somebody else's building, advertising your Mountain Dew industry over here, that would be off-premise signage.
Well, off-premise signage is signage that advertises something that is not on the same premises that the sign is advertising. So with shopping center signs, all of those businesses are on that property. A billboard generally is an off-premises sign on the side of the road on private property that's advertising something that is elsewhere. So the courts have held that you can prohibit commercial off-premises signs. A projecting sign, I'll admit we haven't thought about that. That sounds a little bit like an electronic sign. If it's on premises, if it's the sign for that business, it would probably be covered by the sign code, but as an electronic sign.
Thank you. So you had the examples of sign clutter, and we all know what that looks like. Does that include the city's own signs?
It could. You're talking about directional signs or
Yeah, because
wayfarer
we have a
signs?
lot of street signs in this city. I mean, we had a consultant come a few years ago to talk about parking downtown, and she mentioned that there's a point where you have so many signs that you don't see them anymore. So we don't regulate our own signs with this code.
Well, with this code, there would be certain regulations depending on their location, but there is an exemption for permits for governmental wayfinder signs and such, so I'm not really sure, it depends.
Okay.
So if we were doing, I mean, a good example, if I want to pull in our parks, there would be governmental wayfinder signs, I can't say that word tonight, so that would be exempt. But if we're doing signs, like street signs saying Sherman Avenue, I think there's some
We have
traffic control sign standards that we use.
We have banners downtown, and we have banners on East Sherman. Are those permitted, or are those just because it's our pool, we're going to do it?
Yes, there's an agreement with the Downtown Association where they're allowed to put banners on the light poles seasonally. Not really sure, so I think they're really deemed more of a flag.
Okay. So let's talk about non-conforming signs like Dan and Woody were talking about earlier, and billboards. Not a fan of billboards. I was a child when Lady Bird Johnson was around, so I know how that works. One of my concerns, so I have a concern about, I want our city to be business-friendly. And I think if something happened right now to a billboard that was already existing in the city, and say a tree fell on it, and the amount of damage, according to our code, exceeded 50%, the city would order that billboard removed. Okay, I think that would be anti-business. I mean, as much as I don't like billboards, I think that would be a taking. But I also have concerns for what I would call quasi-historic sign. So you have this Paul Bunyan right there on Northwest Boulevard in front of the Paul Bunyan, and if something happened to that, and all of a sudden the big bad city said, no, it's a non-conforming sign, and it's damaged more than 50%, you have to take it away, we would hear howls. So I would say, and I'll probably make a motion later after everyone's blabbed, to remove that, just because, to me, it seems like, from the standpoint of being pro-business, I would like to see, I mean, as much as I don't like billboards, to like to see those replaced. If they come down. I mean, it's not hurting anyone. We're not adding billboards, which I think was the intent of council, if I'm going to guess, the old guy. What they wanted was they just didn't want the city polluted with billboards. The number we have is fine. I don't think it sticks out. I haven't heard any complaints. I would hate to see them removed. I would hate to see the Paul Bunyan sign removed and other similar signs like that. And then also, later on in the code, we talk about billboards specifically. We repeat the part about 50% of the market value if the damage happens, but also if the city annexes. And I think, to me, that would be just quite rude to say we annex, say, Hutter, and Hutter, don't be nervous. But if we did, and there's signs there, I don't think they should be torn down. I think they're already part of the fabric. I also think I'm going to say Neil, because I don't want to murder your last name, but like he said earlier, if they want to upgrade a sign, to electronic, I think that's okay. I think some of the signs we have on a Highway 95, I think are much more obnoxious and like Las Vegas style signs, as opposed to some of the digital signs that we see from Lamar and Yesco out on the freeway and out on Celtice, which are more subtle. In fact, there's one of them, I didn't even know it was an electronic sign until it changed. And then I'm like, whoa. So I think we could be a little bit more accommodating and remove those articles from our code. I don't know how the rest of council thinks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Well, I would like to talk on the subject too. I will say that my spouse works in outdoor advertising. However, he's one employee in a very large corporation throughout the whole United States and Canada. So I do not see it as a conflict of interest. He doesn't build billboards, or he's not in the corporate office determining where they're going to go or how they're going to be leased through property owners. So I want to speak just to the language. I also find it not business-friendly at all. I was kind of taken aback by the outright statement that prior councils wanted to make sure billboards went away. I don't think that's the right way to treat companies, businesses in this community. That language under the billboard statute, I think the whole idea that they're the only entity not allowed to structurally upgrade their boards, it's flagrantly against that kind of business. That a billboard couldn't be annexed into the city. It would have to go away if we annexed a piece of property, once again, is not business friendly. And then, of course, if it's damaged by fire, by falling trees, it doesn't appear that the shopping center would have the same sort of treatment, that they could replace their sign, but the billboard companies would not be able to do that. So I don't think it's business friendly. I don't like that language in the code. I understand it's been there for a while, but now's the time that we're talking about the city code. Now's the time when we can adopt what we want to adopt. And just out of fairness and the ability to be friendly to our businesses, I don't like that language at all.
With regard to the comments that have just been made, I would ask you as councilors to look at what we're just approving right now. If you wish to make an additional change to the code, I think the best path forward would be to approve the changes that have been made, if you wish to do that. And then, after you've done that, then provide through a motion a direction to staff relative to a part of the code that has not changed in terms of the changes that you would like to see. Well, Dan, I interrupted him.
Right.
So.
Well, I guess just so that I'm on the same page, because I guess, there's a lot of things that probably exist in our code that unless something comes up, we can't be, can't be tuned to everything, and you learn things as you go along. So I guess I wasn't aware or tuned in that if I owned a billboard company and a tree falls on it, and gee, I can't do that. But if I owned a clothing store or something, the tree falls, well, I could. Well, no, I don't think we should treat that different. The other thing, and I think we probably do need to take a deeper dive in some of this, because I would like to see us, one thing, just to not penalize them, and if it, something happens, they should be able to rebuild. If we annex and it's on there, I think we should allow that in. At the same time, I think we should look at some things that would promote and encourage maybe the transformation of plain old billboards into the digital electronic, because those are, much more appealing and very useful. And so I think that, one thing is to, however we do this, to kind of freeze in place and not go backwards, but also, take a hard look at, not changing that part of the code that says if something happens, you can't redo it, or if we annex, but also to do something to encourage maybe that further development of the electronic billboards, visual graphic sign. So,
Dan, too?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So
he's Dan 1. He was here
actually,
first.
the Dan 1 denotes the older Dan.
Oh,
I'm not going there. So I could make a motion right now just to pull those three items from the proposed code, and then see how badly you wince in pain. The first item for council and those of you playing along at home, would be section 15.50.390. Within that section, just remove A.3, which is talking about legal non-conforming signs that have had 50% of damage cannot be rebuilt. This would cover billboards, but it would also cover like the Paul Bunyan sign, or perhaps some other signs that are, I would say, historic in nature, and cut a little slack to those things, because I'd like to see them grandfathered in. Pulling that out would effectively do it. Then also in section, I don't know which one this is, it could be 1550-400, I have section C, 2, B, and C, which section C is specifically about billboards and off-premises signs. And just on section 2 talks about billboards that were lawful on December 1st, 2019, may remain in place subject to the following restrictions. And the only restriction that, well, actually, what do you think about that? Actually, I think we should take that whole thing out, because that refers to altering the billboards as well.
Yep.
Because we should be able to alter them. So I think just taking out C2 would solve the problem. That goes ahead and allows billboards to be altered, so they could be made electronic or digital, that the billboards annexed in need not be removed, and that any billboard that's damaged where the repair cost exceeds more than 50% can be repaired and stick around. This would not add any billboards to the city, but it would preserve the ones that we have. It would keep those businesses that rely on that income stream, it would keep them operating, and it wouldn't take anything away from them. So that would be my suggestions.
Well, I would ask that any motion you make would be just a direction to staff to bring that back, because the way this was advertised tonight, it would lead me to believe that there was going to be no action taken relative to billboards, because there were no changes to the billboard section of the code. So I think that ought to come back as a separate consideration, because that there may be people here who might want to talk to you about billboards, but we did not advertise that. If you looked through the agenda and looked at the changes that were occurring, you would say, oh, there's nothing here about billboards, so I don't need to worry about that.
Respectfully, Mr. Mayor, you did have a gentleman who came into the meeting who heard
Yes.
about it, who asked specifically about billboards. Not only that, I think such precedent would hamstring us on our very purpose for being here, which is just not to blanketly approve something, but also to work it. I mean, we have input that we can offer, and to say that our input has to be stopped because it has to be approved and then we have to come back, that just prolongs the process. You know, was a lightning strike right before our meeting, and acts of God happen. I would not want to see someone miss that narrow window because of an act of God when we could change it right now.
Well, I shared my senior wisdom with you, and if you wish to ignore that, that's the choice of the council.
You would have loved having me in class.
Okay, any further discussion? Kiki, you look like you have something
I just wanted to
wise to
mention,
share.
I hope it's wise. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, because we did talk about content, and I wanted to talk about the temporary signs. Obviously, this is a little personal to me, as I was kind of made a poster child during the campaign for being accused of removing signs illegally, and that didn't occur. And I felt like that there is something we can do to be better as a council when it comes to talking about those types of signs. Further to that, I was involved in an ADA project where we did wheelchairs down the sidewalks and the A-frame, which are also under one umbrella of temporary signs, were often in the wrong places. And so my thought was, and I'd like to see what council thinks about when you have a temporary sign, if it became part of code, that a locator indicator was put on a website that said, this sign has permission to be here, this is where it's supposed to be located, here's how it was permitted, here's who gave permission for that sign to be there. Any citizen or business owner would be able to go to a site and know that that temporary sign was permitted. I mentioned this to Renata, there's sign tracking apps out there. I'm not certain how in detail we wanted to go with that, but I do think that we can, in the spirit of not having this kind of waste of taxpayer money and pursuing things that could maybe be done simpler with utilizing some internet tools of being able to report or even have code enforcement log in and say that where are these temporary signs located and who gave permission for them to be there and are they permitted. And I just wanted to have a little discussion about that and see what the rest of council thought.
I think it would just be easier not to mess with anyone else's sign.
Dan?
Well, I guess if you're talking about potentially having to locate every campaign sign that's out there, I think that would be totally unworkable. I mean, everybody runs for office. You have people who give other people signs, and there's a place you can go and pick them up, and you need to have a permit, I guess, as those temporary signs that covers everything. But man, if we were going to try to take it down to chapter and verse, that's pretty tough.
Yep.
And I don't think we want to use sign code enforcement. I mean, those are kind of scarce resources on that. That's
Well, and to Councilmember Gookin's comment, it's happening now. People are doing that and moving signs, and A-frame signs are being moved by other people, and oftentimes staff people, employees will put an A-frame sign out and not know where it's supposed to go. And then it really frustrates other people because it's in their way, it's in the path, but there isn't an easy way to do that. And during a campaign, most anyone who runs knows you track where your signs go. You have a name when somebody checks them out. You know where they went because you're responsible to pick them up. So it's no different than doing it on paper than it would be logging it into a site. So I don't see it as a step that changes any procedures. What it does is it allows anyone to be able to take a look and say, this sign is permitted to be there. And then it doesn't change process, but what it does is it gives the community the chance to say everyone can be held accountable for who gave permission for a sign to be where.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make a motion here.
Please.
Make a motion to direct staff to remove those sections that I mentioned. Well, and after I make the motion, I want to hear from Randy whether there's going to be any impact to the rest of the code. So that in 1550-390, that section A3 be removed. And that in section, and I don't know which, this is in Article 4, so I'm just going to use Article 4, section C2 be removed in its entirety. Do you need any clarification on what I did?
Is that a motion?
Yeah, that was a motion.
I'll second it so we keep it. Yeah.
Would you like to hear from me?
I would like to hear from our legal counsel on the impact of removing these items.
It does not, these are not content-based regulations. They're certainly within council's decision to remove provisions regarding repairing of billboards. I would suggest, though, that paragraph 2 on page 12, that's in 15-.50.400C, that the 2 remain. You can remove the A, B, and C, but you still have to have language in there that says existing billboards can be permitted.
Then I would modify my motion to just say that under 2, that items A, B, and C be removed. And that way, item 2 keeps the existing ones, they're grandfathered in, basically. So we grandfather them in.
Correct.
And they can repair them, they can update them.
With the removal of A, B, and C, that would be the case.
Very good, thank you. And so, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just do this so we can get this out of the code, and then we can approve the code later with any other amendments council would like to make.
Would you please then restate your motion in its entirety for clarity?
Certainly, thank you. So my motion is to remove from the code 155390, to remove section A3, which is about legal non-conforming signs damaged, and the cost of repairs exceeds 50% of the fair market value of the sign, then it can't be replaced. So this would cover things like the Paul Bunyan sign. And then in section 155400, paragraph C, or section C, which covers billboards and off-premises signs, that beneath paragraph number 2, that items A, B, and C be removed. These refer to the billboard upgrades, the billboard annexation of a billboard, and also any repairs to a billboard.
I'm lost on that second part.
One more, turn on one more page. And it's these three items.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Does everyone understand the motion, first of all?
I do.
Sherry, did you get that?
Just a follow-up question. I just want to be clear, and I guess I'm wondering, as far as somebody thinking, oh, gee, I'm going to build a new billboard in Coeur d'Alene, we don't want that, and where is that still in the code that we're not allowing new billboards?
That would be in the same subsection of 400C. Number 1 says, except as provided in the code, billboards are prohibited.
That's clear.
And then
Okay.
it says existing billboards are allowed.
Right.
So, yes.
Great, thanks.
Amy?
I have a question, maybe for Renata or Randy, but I'm not opposed to considering this. But I'm wondering if by removing it tonight without giving staff the time to process and do some homework behind these items, or even us having time to consider them more fully, if we're hamstringing ourselves in a unknown way. So I just wanted feedback from staff on that, or if they're comfortable with us moving forward with the proposed motion. You and the team have done all the homework, so the majority.
Sure. So the sign code is one of those policies that's at the council's pleasure. So, as long as you guys are in agreement to how you want to move forward with these billboards, it does grandfather in the ones that are existing and give them the ability to upgrade. And we would process them the same way we would any other sign code request or sign permit request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Quick follow-up on that. If someone did want to change a sign to an electrical sign, then if the existing billboard was not up to the building code, it would have to come up to building code.
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure what all would be included in the engineering of the weight of a new sign like that and all the electrical that would come forward. But again, it's one of those big signs. It would probably have some building code element to it, and it'd have to be run through the building department.
And the modifications I
Footings and
proposed,
stuff.
they wouldn't change any of that because that's language elsewhere in the code.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have a motion before you. Any further discussion?
If this motion moves forward, it's altering that, and then we would approve that. We are approving the sign code, but then the consideration, if we wanted to discuss anything further, we could bring it back as an amendment at another time.
If you approve his motion, it removes those sections from the code. And so then, when you go back to the consideration of the original motion, you would be considering that section of the code with those sections already removed. And there really wouldn't be any further action after that.
Okay.
Did I do okay?
I think so. We're requesting a full repeal and a new approval. So I think Dan's motion to amend what we're bringing forward as the new code and then making a motion to approve the new code if you so desire would be the right steps, if that helps.
All those in favor of the motion respond with aye.
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 Those opposed with nay? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you, Council.
Now, we still have a motion before us with regard to the rest of the code.
There's no motion yet.
Or did that
Motion hasn't
cover?
been made on the rest of the code yet. Would you like me to make a motion on the rest of the code?
Yeah, we still, unless you don't want to,
Oh, I don't want to.
if you don't want to approve those other changes, then there's no further business.
Mr. Mayor, I'll
Yes.
make a motion to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 22-1002 once by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Would the clerk please read the title?
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho by repealing Municipal Code Chapter 2.46 entitled Signboard, repealing Chapter 15.24 Sign Code, and adopting a new Chapter 15.50 entitled Sign Code, repealing all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance, and providing an effective date hereof.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt Council Bill number 22-1002.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, that there being no other business, I make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.